Welcome back, everybody, to what could potentially be my last YouTube video before I actually make the move to Germany. We are recording live on Twitch right now. We haven't done one of these in a while, but I figured it'd be cool to record live on Twitch just in case some questions come up. Might lead to some cool things that we could dive into. So welcome to everybody in Twitch chat, but I wanted to take a minute and talk about and do a deeper dive into concert photography in the music industry, because with this situation going on with sleeptoken right now, there's a lot of stuff coming up that people either are very confused with and don't understand how the law works, or just want to ignore how the law works because they don't want their favorite band being talked about and stuff like that, which we've seen a lot of that online. So for this video, I want to dive deeper into concert photography and laws and stuff like that, but I also do want to give an update to the sleeptoken situation, because I do want to throw it out there, even though a lot of people are blasting sleeptoken and media outlets are saying sleeptoken stole from a photographer and stuff like that. I get it. It's clicks and stuff. You're trying to get engagement and get people to watch your video. I do want to be very perfectly clear and say that sleeptoken themselves did not steal from this photographer. Neither did their management. Now, you could make the argument at the end of the day that they are responsible and liable for the people that they hire and do things for them. Yes, but it's not like sleeptoken was going online and looking for photos and stole this photo and stuff like that. So I just want to get that out of there before we dive into this. But there has been a lot of information that's come out since we talked about this in the last 24 hours that I want to dive into here real quick. So quick recap. Obviously, most people watching this video know what's going on, but a professional photographer from Denmark has said that their photography was used for sleeptoken's merchandise without their permission. And in my last video, I covered all of this. I showed the photo, I showed the coin. We even overlapped them where you can clearly see it was their photo that was used for this coin. Again, it turned into sleeptoken is stealing, but that's not quite it. It turns out that there was an independent artist that was hired to make these coins for sleeptoken. They are all individual coins that were sold at different shows. They were exclusive for these shows. And this coin maker is a guy named Zach the Maker. Found his Instagram online and his website. And honestly, the work is very cool. I'm not trying to drag this guy super hard because he is a very good artist. And he's done coins for The Used, Dayseeker, Bring Me the Horizon. He's even got one for Ozzy and Sabbath. And of course, sleeptoken. Lonely Child says, coins, are they not tokens? Okay, I guess for the sake of this, we should call them sleeptoken tokens. That's the only way we can phrase this from now on, I guess. So he's made these sleeptoken tokens. And our photographer from Denmark, Laura, has said that her photo was used to make this coin. And it very clearly was. There's no argument that you could make anymore that her photo wasn't used. There's a lot of people online that are like, oh, that could be any photo of Vessel because lots of people take photos and blah, blah, blah. No, we overlaid it. It is absolutely the photo that was used. Now, what was kind of curious to me was that in her statement that she made about this, she said that this seems to not be an isolated case. And what I thought she was talking about at first was that sleeptoken has had issues with likeness and images and stuff in the past with tattoo artists and fan art and stuff like that. I thought that's what she was talking about. No, it actually turns out that this is not the only case with one of these sleeptoken tokens where a professional photographer's image was used for the image on the coin. So this is a TikTok that was actually sent to me by Cookie, one of our viewers, Cookie Trish, one of our viewers, that was put on TikTok by somebody named Leave Not Live. And the caption on it says, at the end of the day, it's been a year since this issue has been raised and credit has not been given to the individuals whose intellectual property was used without permission. I will give the maker some credit here, as since this begun, they now do credit the photographers, the work they use, but the original 6 still have yet to be credited or in some cases compensated. I'll play this video on stream for you guys. So there's actually a lot of good information in this. And while I won't show the whole thing on the YouTube video, I will link this TikTok in the description of the video if you want to watch it. But the short version of what she is claiming is that they have found a handful of other photographers whose photos were used in Zach the Maker's coins, who were not contacted beforehand to use their photographs, which Zach has even admitted to publicly that he didn't contact any photographers, that they were offered compensation, which I will talk about in a second. And then this has actually been an issue that's been going on for at least a year. So this isn't even something that's new. This isn't even like, for Zach the Maker specifically, as the coin maker, Laura's story that came out isn't like a shocking, like, oh God, I don't realize I did this. Like, this has actually been something that's been going on for a while. And it is very important that she brought up in this video, this is not something that sleeptoken or their management or Rico or RCA or anything did. This is specifically between Zach the Maker and these photographers. He used their images without permission. But now it is at a point where Laura and some of these other photographers feel like there's nothing being done to come to a resolution with this. And that is why they're trying to get management involved. Some people are saying Laura's just trying to get the band's attention and all this. It's not that at all. It's just nothing's being done about it. So she's involving the band whose merchandise it is to see if they're aware that this is happening. So about the compensation for these photos, right? Laura has actually now made it public what the compensation that she was offered was, because there were a lot of people saying she was offered money and she's just making a big deal because she wants more money. Zach originally offered her coins, sleep token tokens. Just, I'll give you a couple coins for using your photo. So, yeah. Then when she said no, he offered her 150 euros and a non-disparagement clause, not specifically a NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. Non-disclosure agreement would mean she can't talk about it at all. A non-disparagement clause means she can't say anything bad about Zach or the situation. Yeah, this isn't... Dude, I would be insulted as well, man. If I did work for somebody and they lifted my photo and said, yeah, I'll give you one of the coins. Dude, I would be pissed too, man. I would be. And I would try to get the band involved. Fat Tony said $150. Is this a joke? Not to mention that these coins were sold for $50 a piece. I don't know how many were limited for each show, but you're talking about the cost of 3 coins. And not even the cost, like the income on it. These coins probably do not cost that much to make. But yeah, I can see why she's trying to bring this to the attention of band and management, because that is a highly insulting offer, basically when somebody just admitted to you, yeah, I took your photo and here's what I'm going to give you. I saw a comment on Jesse Lee's Instagram that's worth bringing up in this. Somebody named Elizabeth Lynch said 99% of the photos Zach the Maker used for coins was taken by Adam Rossi. Adam is Sleep Token's touring photographer, if nobody knew that. There are hundreds of pictures like that of Vessel. As a small photographer, I support all photographers, but this doesn't make any sense to me. I find that wild that a photographer would say this doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like it's very clear cut. But that point that 99% of the photos that Zach the Maker used for coins was taken by Adam, sure, maybe, but the 1% isn't. And while there are hundreds of pictures like this of Vessel, it's clear that this is an exact copy. So if Zach has already been using Adam's photos, then he's already aware how licensing works. Or if Adam has a contract with Sleep Token to where all the photos he takes on tour belong to the band, then the band or management has been giving photos to Zach the Maker. But that really made me start thinking, okay, well, if he's been using Adam's photos for most of these coins, why not continue to do that? So I really don't even know if on Zach the Maker's side of this was anything that he may have been even aware of. I would like to give some benefit of the doubt and say, maybe he just found a cool picture of Vessel online and when he was making coins and just used these without thinking anything of it. And now he's kind of facing the consequences of that. I really don't know. I think the only person that knows that process is Zach, but this just shows you, like, if you're making merchandise for a band that's going to be sold and stuff like that, you need to be aware of licensing and copyright laws and stuff. Otherwise, stuff like this is going to happen and it's going to bite you in the ass. But going through some of these other comments, man, I have been very disheartened by some of the responses I've seen to this, coming from people that claim to be professional photographers, people in other bands, and generally the Sleep Token fan base that has been nonstop harassing and going after Laura since she has brought this up. Like, some of the comments she has on her page are actually quite disgusting. I actually had a brief conversation with her last night, and she was kind of sharing with me like the constant DMs and negativity she's getting thrown at her. And I can kind of relate to that doing content online. Like, I've said things about bands that their fan base hasn't liked, and they've come after me very aggressively. So I told her, I was like, listen, I relate. Like, if you need to vent, let me know. I know it can get overwhelming. But yeah, it's not just comments on other outlets. It's comments on her page. Like somebody on her own page said, I'd be honored. You didn't deserve to photograph them. Another person said you posted it on the internet. It's public domain at that point, which is not true, and we're going to get into in a second. Another person said, how can a band steal their own likeness? You don't own a photo of someone else that you posted online without a watermark. If I take a picture of your house, I don't own it. Ridiculous. Art theft sucks, but you're just being ridiculous. Get a grip. None of that is true. Like, we're not talking about the band's image and likeness. We're talking about the rights to a photograph. And watermarks don't do anything except for protect a photo. Just because you put a watermark on it doesn't do anything with law or anything like that. And again, we'll get into that in a second. And then you've got band members like Danny Case from Ashes to New saying it does look just like the image given the matching and finer detail, but still you don't get to own the likeness of a person from a particular angle. That's not what the argument is. Johnny Hawkins from Nothing More, as we talked about in my previous video, said, I'm all for small creators and artists getting compensated for their work and being protected, but this just looks like a depiction of him, and there are probably hundreds of photos that look like that. And that comment has 2,000 likes on it. That, to me, is kind of a problem, that there are band members, notable band members out here saying things like this, where people take their word for it. And nothing of what he said is true. And there are thousands of people liking it because he's a band member in a very notable band. And they're like, oh, if he said this, it must be true. And it's not. There are probably hundreds of photos that look like that. But we've clearly proved in my last video, it is the photo. Doobie said, photographer just wants attention button. Another person responded and said, F this photographer, it's literally himself. Other bands on here claiming that's a reach. It becomes a huge problem when stuff like this happens and other band members and bands who consider themselves artists take the opposite side from the artist themselves. Also, let's be honest here. I'm probably going to get a lot of heat for this comment, especially because I work for a band and stuff, but band members can be fucking stupid sometimes, man. They're band members. They're artists. They create music. They don't know everything about everything. This is why they hire management, PR people, people that work for them. Bands focus on their craft, which is their music and their art. They're not up to speed with copyright law with photographers. So when they don't know these things and they come on here and say stuff like this, people take them for their word and they're like, oh, well, he said it, so it must be right. And that's a huge problem. And another huge problem is the people that devalue their own work because it affects everyone else. One person that commented on here said, I'm a concert photographer who has never been paid for any of the concert photos I have taken of so many bands. And if a band as popular as Sleeptoken used one of my photos for a patch or anything like it, I'd take it as a compliment and keep taking photos. Sure, as a photographer, the photos are property of the photographer, but when you take a photo of someone else, it's kind of theirs too. I have a day job that pays my bills, and concert photography is something I just enjoy getting to do. That right there is a massive issue for artists, not only in photography, but graphic arts, programming, even roadies, man. When people devalue themselves, it allows other people to be devalued as well, which is a massive problem in the music industry. Sure, maybe this concert photographer says, I've never been paid for any of my work and I don't care because I just like shooting photography. Well, then you're not a professional photographer. That's a hobby. We're talking about professional photographers that have been commissioned to go do work for these bands. But beyond that, when it comes to other art or other work, this happens with roadies all the time, man, and it hurts everybody. There are roadies out there that will severely undercut what they should be getting paid by bands because they just want to work for a popular band or they just want to put that band on their resume. It happens all the time. It's actually happened to me before too. I got offered a tour maybe 10 years ago where I agreed to a rate and I was going to go out and do the work. And then a week before that tour, I was told I was no longer going to be doing it because a friend of the band had offered to go out and work for them for a quarter of what I was going to do it for. This is somebody that has had no touring experience or nothing like that. This was just a band seeing, hey, we can save some money by bringing somebody else out that said they'd work for cheaper. And this happens all the time in our industry. Because there are so many people in the arts that devalue themselves, it has allowed these people that are hiring and doing works to devalue everybody else. But let's get off the whole sleep token specific topic here with Zach the Maker and the photographers and stuff like that. I actually want to dive into concert photography to maybe give people a better idea of how this stuff is working. And it might not. I know there's people out there that are going to argue it either way. And I will be the first to admit to you, I don't know everything about copyright law, especially when it comes to other countries. And that is one thing you have to remember. This photographer that we've been talking about in the story is from Denmark, and their fair use laws are different than the US. So everybody that's been arguing that this is fair use, it might not be legally. I don't know, but I do want to read to you and talk to you about some of these copyright laws. So on Instagram, there has been a photographer that has been very vocal about this. This photographer's name is Nikolai Bransholm Bering. He's an internationally award-winning photographer from Copenhagen, Denmark. He has been very vocal in comment sections trying to educate people on how this stuff works to maybe give them a different way of thinking. But as we know how it goes on social media, people just argue with him. But he made a few posts on his Instagram stories that I want to kind of share with you guys to give you a just real basic concept of how this works. The first slide says, who owns the photo? The photographer owns the copyright, always. The subject in the photo does not own it. No exceptions. Fame, image rights, or personal opinion do not matter. Second slide says myths busted. Watermarks do not make it legal. They just make stealing harder. Being inspired by a photo is not permission. Getting access to a show or a photo pass does not replace payment. Tagging the photographer does not equal compensation. Third slide, commercial use rules. Using a photo for merch, ads, or money without permission is illegal. Derivative works still count as copyright infringement. Credit alone is not enough. Fourth slide says, bottom line, loving photography does not mean giving it away for free. Respect the work and respect the law. Permission and payment are not optional. And that's one of the big arguments with this is what is the difference between the actual photographer owning the photo or somebody owning the image and likeness and stuff like that, because a lot of people have argued, well, it's a picture of a band. Why can't they just use it? The photographer doesn't then automatically own their image and likeness. They just own that specific photo that they took. And depending on the contract that they had with how they're doing their photography work, which is a big component to this entire argument, I will say that. There are a lot of different contracts that go into this stuff. But let's just assume that a photographer has the rights and hasn't released the rights to their photography. They own it. They own that photograph, and it cannot be used without their permission. Fat Tony in chat says, but if changes are enough to see it as new work, then all of this does not matter. But that is all dependent on what is considered derivative or fair use in the countries where these laws exist. And again, like I said, these laws do change from place to place. But bottom line is, in all law, the photographer that took the photo owns the right to that photo. So let's talk about copyright laws really quick. When a photograph meets the requirements for copyrightability, the copyright owner has several exclusive rights. 1, the right to reproduce the work. 2, the right to distribute the work. 3, the right to create derivative works of the work. 4, the right to publicly perform the work, and 5, the right to publicly display the work. Copyright protection for photographs applies automatically once a photograph is originally authored and fixed in a tangible form, which includes storing digital copies of captured images on a memory chip in the camera or on a computer hard drive, saving files in the cloud, or printing the images on traditional film and paper. Copyright law does not protect ideas, facts, or concepts, but instead protects the creative choices a photographer makes when capturing an image. Protectable elements in a photograph that have been recognized by courts include how photographers adjust lighting, direct their subjects to pose, dress, and makeup, create entire scenes complete with props, find optimal camera angles, and make other compositional and directional decisions in order to express and convey different ideas, stories, feelings, and moments in the resulting photographs. A photographer's copyright ownership can depend on the circumstances of the particular project or shoot. Particularly for collaborative projects or in instances where photographers are hired to conduct a photo shoot or photograph an event, it can be tricky to determine who owns the copyright to the photographs at the end of the day. Generally, the Copyright Act recognizes the authors of a work as the copyright owner, but also states that the authors of a work can include employers or other people for whom the work was prepared under a concept referred to as the work made for hire doctrine. Copyright law also recognizes that a particular work can have joint authorship, meaning that multiple authors hold an equal interest to the copyrighted work. To avoid confusion over ownership issues, at the beginning of any photo shoot or project, it is important for photographers to know their rights, understand the intent of all involved parties, memorialize any important agreements or understandings, and carefully read over any agreements that may have been presented to them. So that is a huge part of this argument too, because when photographers, especially in concert photography, do festivals or shows or whatever, sometimes there are forms involved. Sometimes there are release forms where they have to sign a waiver saying anything that they take now belongs to the band and the band can use it, or the festival or the magazine that they were hired for. And in this specific situation with, Laura photographing Sleep Token, we don't exactly know if or what those release forms were. Now, several other photographers at Copenhagen have said that there was no release form specifically from the festival or the band for that specific performance. Now, Laura has said that she was commissioned by a magazine to shoot this show. What the details of that agreement were, I don't know. It could have been that she retains all the rights to her photos and the magazine then licenses them from her, or that she takes all the photos and they now belong to the magazine because she was hired by them. We don't know those details unless she says something. But I would be willing to guess that she definitely did not sign a release to the magazine, because she would not be making a big deal about this if those photos belonged to the magazine. Because if the magazine had licensed that photo to Zach the Maker, she would have found out about that, and this wouldn't be the big deal that it is right now. And just to throw my own experience in here with this, as somebody who tour manages bands and deals with photographers on a regular basis, all of that is true. When we do shows, when I am out with Electric Callboy and I'm tour managing their shows, we often get requests from local photographers for media outlets and stuff like that want to come and shoot our shows. And it is basically up to my discretion on who I approve and what laws, or not laws, but what rules I set on them to photograph our show. For example, with Electric Callboy specifically, we do not allow flash photography. We do not allow video. It has to be professional equipment. And we say that they get to be within the barricade for the first 3 songs of the set. And after that, if they want to, photograph from the crowd, totally cool. We do not have photographers sign a release form for the band. Any pictures that they take belong to them. All that we ask is that we get to see the photos that we took. And if there's any that the band really likes and wants to use, then they will reach out through management to the photographer to license that photo. Now, I will say, every band does this differently. There might be bands out there that have pretty strict release photos that say any picture you taken can be used by us. But this is why these agreements and these forms are so important to have in place beforehand, so stuff like this doesn't happen and everybody knows who owns the rights to these photos. And also, because we brought up Adam, Sleep Token's tour photographer, earlier, I saw a lot of people online talking about, well, what are his rights and stuff like that. While I don't know his contract, and I can speak for other situations too with photographers on the road, usually since they are for hire by the band, the band will get the rights to those photos from the photographer that they have hired. If a band is hiring a tour photographer to go on tour with them and take photos of them, that band will usually have it in their agreement that they get to use those photos however they want, whether it's for social media, for ads, for merchandise, whatever. This is way different than a local photographer or somebody from a media outlet. These rules in these agreements are completely different from case to case. And I will say, a lot of people have tried to devalue concert photographers. I've actually seen some people, I don't know if I can find the screenshot, but I've seen some people in other bands, smaller bands, saying that concert photographers are scum of the earth, that they don't do anything but point and click and stuff like that. That could not be further from the truth, man. I actually think that touring videographers and touring photographers are some of the hardest working people on tour. The amount of work that they put in on tour is mind blowing. I remember a tour that I did about 10 years ago. Our tour photographer and videographer was not only running around all day, following the artist, taking videos, taking photos, stuff like that. They were usually one of the first people awake every day doing work on their computer, whether it was editing photos or posting stuff to social media for the band. They're usually the last one to sleep every night because they're going through the hundreds of photos that they took and doing color grading and doing editing and stuff like that. And you're also kind of devaluing the hours and days and years that these people have put into their craft of photography, because we all look at photography. We all know that photography, what am I trying to say here? Talent varies from photographer to photographer, just like anything else. There are good photographers and there are bad photographers. And people want to hire good photographers. So there's so many years of experience in there and so much time that they put into stuff just past taking photos. And even the taking photos part, it's not as easy as just pointing and clicking and taking a picture. You have to know what angles, what lighting, where bands are going to be when you're shooting them, stuff like that. There's so much more that goes into this than all these people are just throwing out there. That this whole situation is kind of a bummer, to be honest. It's just people being devalued for their work once again to make it sound like it's not a big deal. As it was just said in chat, it's art. Photography is art. And for all you people out there that are always taking the band side about how artists should be compensated for their works and, you know, AI is stealing from artists and people are stealing from artists and stuff like that, you should care about the photographers. You should care about the graphic designers. You should care about the programmers who constantly have their work stolen or devalued or undercut, because this isn't just photographers. This happens to graphic designers and stuff all the time. As I said in my last video, I find some bands very hypocritical that they always talk about how their art should be valued, but they will be the first ones to take advantage of graphic artists when it comes to merch designs and stuff like that, whether it's not paying them enough or just lifting their image. This happens to artists across the board. So if you support one artist, you should be supporting the rest of them. But anyways, I feel like I'm getting close to just ranting about this, because I do feel like a lot of artists are treated unfairly. So we'll just wrap it up there. I hope the way that this came together kind of maybe gave you a little bit more insight onto what goes on with this stuff, and maybe you learned a little more. And again, a lot of what I talked about in this video is opinion, and it doesn't mean I'm right or you're wrong or the other way around. I just like to throw the opinion out there to get people thinking in a different way. So maybe this did that for you. To everybody that was here live on Twitch chat, thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing stuff up. Thank you for giving me your input. If you're watching on YouTube later and you'd like to join us on Twitch when we record, which won't be much anymore when I'm moving, but we'll get there. You can go to twitch.tv/TankTheTech. But yeah, until next time, wherever you are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other. I love you all, and I will see you very soon.